Hi everyone, welcome back to the podcast. And today I am joined by the one and only Jason Johnson as we sit down and have a quite amazing conversation actually all around kindness in the workplace. It was one of those episodes actually that I went into with not really knowing what to expect, and it completely was out of this world. Having that conversation with Jason was mind blowing to me, and it resonated with me a great deal as well. So I'm really happy to be sharing this episode with you, to bring this episode to you, and I hope you enjoy it. So with all that said, let's dive into today's episode with Jason. Welcome to Raising Consciousness with me, Lou Burrows, where raising human consciousness happens. On this show, I'm joined by guests to cover a range of topics and have conversations that will raise human consciousness for current and future generations. Now, let's dive into today's show. Hi everyone, welcome back to Raising Consciousness. And today we have another interview session that I'm really looking forward to. We have Jason Johnson joining us. Jason, thank you for being here. I know it's early where you are.
Yes, thank you, Luke. I'm honored to be here. Absolutely. I'm in Texas.
Yeah, so it's like just gone 5 a.m. there.
Yeah, a little after 5. Got my coffee. I'm ready to go.
Wow. Wow. Well, I really do appreciate you being here, especially that early. So, a little bit about Jason: that he is a father of two, a husband of 20 years, and worked in corporate America since you've been 25 years old. Before we dive into the main depth of the episode, I would love to learn more about you. I know you have your own podcast. I'm really passionate also about leadership at work. Heart influence, personal growth, and all of that good stuff. So yeah, in about a couple of minutes or so, like, who is Jason Johnson? And then we'll dive into the main meat of the show.
Sure. Sure, absolutely. So I've been in leadership roles since I was about 14, in high school and then on into the workplace. And I've always felt like, well, let me back up a second. My dad was in the military and we traveled around a lot. And so by the time I was 12, I had lived in 7 different places, hundreds or thousands of miles apart. Born in Germany, moved, to Georgia, Texas, Arizona. We were always picking up and moving everywhere. And so it was very hard for me to settle in as a kid. It was constantly change. And so when I was about 12, my parents got divorced, and so we stopped moving, but I was in an environment where I just had to learn it to get, uh, kind of start over. It was traumatic for me, but it was also a time in my life that I was able to, connect with some people and start to build a foundation. And I noticed that, if you just introduce kindness into your environment, people get so busy in their lives and they get in a routine. But for me, going through change, it was always observing and looking at a fresh perspective, right? And so when I get in new environments, I look at what's going on, and I just realize that people get so ingrained in what they're doing that they forget to have kindness. They're so focused on tasks that they forget that we're all human beings. And so
Mm.
I take that with me everywhere I go. And in my adult life, I've worked in different states, different teams all across the country for the last 22 years. And I just take that approach, and it's wonderful. It cultivates the space for people to feel safe, safe to speak, safe to fail. We're all human beings. And when you have kindness in the workplace, it just creates a wonderful space for people to be engaged and build community.
Are you familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yes,
Have you read his new book?
I haven't.
You haven't. Okay, I haven't, but I have got a copy. It's on the list, right, to read, but I do have it. And I ask that because his new book is called 12 and a half, and it's like 12 emotional ingredients needed for business success, ultimately. When you're talking there about kindness in the workplace, and I'm a huge fan of Gary and I listen to a lot of his content. it kind of brought that up because some of the stuff that I've heard him say recently, and that he addresses in his book as well, is around traditionally, business has kind of been like dog eats dog kind of thing, like very aggressive, and that actually we can step into this new way of operating where there is kindness. And in the book he has these 12 ingredients, as I was saying. So I think in there's like empathy, um creativity, or like all these sorts of things, and it doesn't have to be this aggressive kind of nature. And when you're talking there, it just reminded me of that really, and I just kind of wanted just to speak to that and how we can, especially in corporate, start to be more conscious. Obviously, that's what the show is all about, right, Jason? Like to
Yeah,
raising consciousness around these points, how we can start to lead more in this way in an environment that traditionally has been the opposite.
yeah, absolutely. When I first became a general manager and was in charge of a group of people, I was about 25 years old, and I didn't fit the mold. All of
Mm.
my counterparts around the country were college educated, wore suits, were managers. And so when I got my first role opportunity to lead my own team, I basically just asked them, "What do you need? How can I help?"
Mm.
And they hadn't ever been asked that before. And by asking, "How can you help?" You're supporting them. I'm a servant leader. That's how I operate. And because the people that you're leading are the ones making things happen, those are the people that are touching our customers. And if I can make their day better, they can make our customers' day better. And it's a ripple effect. Leading with heart centered leadership. I call it leading with heart influence because it's influencing with your energy, you know, it's being supportive. How can I help? I tell people that I'm a pothole filler, that they
Mm.
need a smooth road to do their job. And it's my job to fill the potholes so they can do their job.
Yeah, I like that. You kind of said there that you haven't fitted like the mold before. Like how did you navigate that? Um, I'm thinking especially like when you first stepped into that, obviously being quite young at 25. Was that difficult? Like how did you, yeah, navigate that time?
It was difficult, Luke, because I felt like when we would have meetings on a corporate level, I just wasn't part of the circle. And
Mm.
so I kept my nose down. I did, I would obviously show up and speak when I was spoken to, but it took me a long time to get the courage to talk about it. My results or my team's results have always been positive. I mean, we've always been in the top percentile from a revenue standpoint, retention standpoint, profitability standpoint. And finally, somebody at a high level took notice and they asked me, "What do you attribute your success to?" And I said, "Heart centered leadership." And so that sparked a conversation. And they said, "We need more of this." So this past year, I've been on a journey speaking with other leaders and holding classes and talking and really taking that language, Luke, into the workplace.
Mhm.
And I think that at first there was some awkwardness, like, what is this guy talking about? But knowing that I had the support of some senior executives, it's been wonderful. You
Mm.
know,
I think a lot of times traditionally maybe people in business don't think like this way of showing up leads to business results, and there's like that's why they have to be like a bit more aggressive. Like if it's in sales, like be really salesy, like whatever it is. From your experience, how can leading and ultimately being this way, like embodying this, I feel like once we embody it in like our personal lives, then it becomes who we are. So it's gonna bound to show up in the workplace. What are the impacts on like financially, business results wise? Like how does applying this in the workplace lead to those business and financial results?
So I mentioned early on in the conversation that, we're all human beings and we are all capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And when you're in an environment where the senior leader or the leader of a group, micromanages people and tells people what to do and dictates how they operate during the day, then you're holding them back. You
Mm,
are you are only allowing people to operate how you want them to operate. And that kind of leadership comes from focusing on all the metrics. It's driven solely to increase profits or into reduce expenses. But when you operate from a place of love and kindness, then you are basically giving your energy to those that you serve, your employees, your people, your team, and saying, you're inviting them to be themselves. And people are just resilient. And so you get this inclusive group with all these diverse viewpoints because everybody comes from a different place, Luke. They have
mm,
different perspectives, and
of course.
when you can create a safe place for other people to bring their ideas to the table, then magic happens. I mean, people
Mm,
start to come out of their shells, people feel empowered, and then they have ideas. And, all ideas aren't necessarily great ideas, but when you start talking, it generates this energy and this momentum and this flow that it's pretty amazing that people can come to the table with and feel supported, right? I mean,
mm,
it's like you don't learn things unless you fail. If you're driving through a neighborhood that you've never been in and you turn down a road and that road happens to be a dead end, now you know that that road is not going to get you where you're going. And so the next time you go through that neighborhood, you pass that road and you go on to the next road. And that is how you learn. But being a leader, leading with kindness, is saying, it's okay that you went down that road. And now we're moving on to find a better road. That's how you learn. If no one's ever allowed to make that turn, then you don't know. And you know what? That first turn could be the best road, but you never know unless you go down it.
You mentioned there about creating safe spaces. I've
Mhm.
worked with companies before where I felt like I haven't had a voice. So there's kind of a few things here I wanted to run by you. The first point is I always try and look at myself first. And actually I have a responsibility, even though that I in that situation didn't feel like I was being heard, to still voice my opinion, because for me, like I always maybe sometimes I'm like too harsh on myself, man. But I always try to look within and focus on in a way what I can control. And while I may feel that way, to not neglect those feelings, but to notice them and still act on them. And maybe I haven't always done that, so in those spaces. So I kind of come at it from that angle, and that we all have a responsibility, even in those spaces, while we may not feel we have a voice, to still have the courage to stand up and to speak ultimately. And then the second point is actually from the culture and from the leadership team as well. Obviously, they also have a responsibility to create those spaces where, on the other end, in this case, I feel like I can. So it's like that double-edged sword type of thing. So what's your thoughts on that? And then the ingredients or the recipe for creating a safe space. So we'd love to get your kind of thoughts on
Ye
all that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that in my journey, in my path, I think about how I felt, sitting in
Mm,
front of somebody to share an idea and have those discussions. So when, being on the other side of the table as a leader, when I'm talking to somebody, I think about being in their shoes, right?
mm,
It's about putting yourself um, in a situation where you remember what it's like to have the courage or to speak or The opportunities that I've had in my life and having some people, some leaders in my life, uh, give me the space to collaborate or to talk about ideas. It comes back to that place of service. And so when I think about, um, I've worked in hotels, restaurants, being of service. And so when I go to a hotel, I can relate to the people behind the scenes, the people that are making things happen. And I appreciate that. And so it's really um, giving somebody that space because, I wouldn't be where I was at if somebody didn't allow me to make mistakes or
Mm.
invite me to share my ideas. And so it's just putting yourself in somebody else's shoes to understand that they're going through these things, right?
Yeah, I think, and again, this is why I love having these types of conversations, and obviously doing what I do now around consciousness, because I feel like there's sometimes, because we're so busy, I guess, and I think you spoke to it earlier, that maybe we don't have the awareness or the consciousness of that point you just made. And so, what are some things that leaders can do to start to create more safe spaces and ultimately just be more aware of, okay, um, this is how like my team are feeling, or this is the culture that we're kind of setting, and just to be more kind of conscious and aware of um the culture in its entire, as a whole. But also, I'm sure there's things and like small things that they may do on a day-to-day basis that build up over time that then makes the culture what it is. So yeah, would love to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah. So, you mentioned that people are busy. And I think it's about slowing down and being present with your people.
Mm,
Um, when you talk about being present, it's really being in the moment. So I know that when you're in a group setting, and if I'm in a group setting with a leader in front of me and there's other people sitting around, you you talked about having the courage to kind of speak or say
mhm,
something. Um, and that not having the courage comes from fear or anxiety. This negative energy from a past experience that holds you
mm,
back. And when you can let go of the past experiences, then you're truly being present in the moment. And it allows us to have some dialogue, which is positive, right? So it's in the forward motion. And so creating that safe space is being vulnerable as a leader, telling them, "Hey, I've sat where you sat, and the only way that I got to where I got was by somebody allowing me to speak my mind and share ideas and learn and grow. Because the only way
mm,
for us to grow is to share, and we learn from each other. We're going to fail, and that's okay. That's how we learn. I didn't, jump on my bicycle when I was 6 years old and just start riding around the block. I fell off my bike. I scraped my knee. And then,
mm,
my dad encouraged me to get back on the bike. He said, it's okay. So it's creating that same sort of environment to tell people it's okay. We're learning. This is how
mm,
we grow together, and we're in this together. And I think that when you can uh, make that clear with people and allow them that safe space that we're learning together, we're growing together, that we don't like all of our results are not because of me, they're because of
mm,
us,
mm.
and we're going to do this together.
Do you think that changing how we kind of spoke about it before, changing how business has been done ultimately? I'm in particular thinking about, I mean, I haven't worked in corporate America, so you have a much more better idea than this than I do. I just kind of picked up insights and have and can and actually have had people who I know that have worked for large companies and have kind of shared with me like their experience. So obviously I put together a picture in my mind, and I'm sure it's not as bad as or for some companies is kind of what is kind of like on the collective. But I'm just kind of wondering, you may have like I suppose in like your situation, like you were at a certain level, and then the other people in your company didn't um understand or
Yeah.
could conceptualize this way of leading and ultimately being. Um, so, what can leaders do if they have like their upline or their manager? Because it comes from like the top down, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
if the CEO of their company, who's I don't know 5 levels above them, is setting a culture that isn't productive or is more negative. What can
Yeah.
the leader 5 levels down do, who still is leading a team in that situation?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it starts with it's all the little things, Luke.
Mm,
And I'll tell you, going out to meeting with clients or prospective clients or, current clients, whatever. When I go to meetings and meet with somebody that has hired my team to do something, then, we'll go into a conference room, and I always try to make it so that I sit on the same side of the table because
mhm,
it's when you have this table between two people, then it's very business like. But when
mhm.
you can sit on the same side of the table and you're sitting next to somebody and you're looking at the same thing, it literally says, I'm on your side. Right. And so I take that same, and it breaks down that literal barrier of a table between us. And then when we get on the same side of the table, we sit and we talk together. We look at the same thing and we ask, what do you want to achieve? How can I help? Those kind of questions. So I take that same concept with employees. When people come into my office, I do have a chair across my desk, but I also have a chair off to the side, and I always invite them to sit at the chair on the side, and then I pivot myself, and we're face to face. My body language is open. I'm vulnerable to them, not sitting behind a desk. And that alone, that little piece of physical activity eliminates a barrier, a physical barrier, a mental, emotional barrier, and we talk. Or, or we sit in an environment and talk outside of my office because maybe it's intimidating for somebody new to come into my office. So I'll meet them in the lunchroom and we'll sit and we'll chat there, or go to the conference room and sit on the same side of the table and just turn my chair and we'll talk face to face. And those little things like that are so huge and significant because it's just telling somebody that I care and I'm removing barriers. I mean, you don't have to say I'm removing barriers, but I literally am removing a barrier between us and having a chat.
I love that. So two other points I kind of wanted to mention was with the again, it was just using your experience within corporate and stuff. Do you see the is there change already happening? And do you think that um it's like a shift, it's a change that is going to take 5 years, 10 years, 15 years to kind of happen within business for people to really adopt and embody this this way of operating? And then yeah, I would love to hear, I don't know, two or three more of those little things that we can do, because I like they seem so simple and so easy, yet I'm sure they make a huge
Yeah.
difference.
You're right. It is the simple things, and I think we think about the simple things, but we don't actually implement them. And I'll give you an example. When I was working in Denver, we had a union, and I had just gotten to Denver. I was recruited to go to Denver because of my management style and my leadership style. Right. When I got there, it was this a lot of tension between this union environment and this management company. And so what the management company was all let go, and they said, we're going to clean the slate. And Jason, would you please come and help lead the team in the new direction? And so when I got there, I just involved those people. So as a manager, I'll give you an example. I walked out to the warehouse and I knew we needed more help. I could have easily hired somebody, and said, "You're going to work in the warehouse with these people," and made the decision. But what I did was, is I went out to the warehouse and I said to the leader in the warehouse, who was a union employee of like 35 years, I said, "Hey, I'm going to hire somebody to help you, but I want you to be part of the interview." And he looked at me like, what's your agenda? What are you up to?" He was very, very concerned, or like, "What's your objective?" And I said, "Well, I can tell that this is new for you, but if they're going to work for you in your space, you should absolutely be part of the process. I want you to hire somebody that is going to help you achieve the goals you want to achieve out here. Like, who am I to just hire somebody and say, take this person and work with them? I want them, you know what the skills are. It's your environment. I want you to be part of the process." And from that moment forward, that person and I had a great relationship. And it literally tore down a wall that existed for 30 years for this person. And and later on, when he retired, he came into my office and he told me, "Jason, I've been here for 35 years. I've had 15 or so managers, and you're the first person to respect me and appreciate me. And I just want to tell you that I really, truly value that." And it was emotional for me. I kind of choked up because here I was, this young kid in my 30s. I say kid, uh, this young person in my 30s, that I'm just doing what comes natural, but it was so huge for progress. And it was just it was a wonderful moment, and it just is simple, right? It's, you're human, I'm human, we're trying to achieve this goal together, and so I wanna work with you, togetherness, in be a team, like, really, truly embrace the word team.
I love
Because
that.
if you take a
On
team in sports, right?
mm,
Uh the goalie, and you call it football, right? We call it
of
soccer.
course.
The goalie doesn't do all the work, right?
Mm,
I mean,
yeah, of
he
course.
has a role in the team to create, to participate with his teammates
Mm,
for one objective, and that's, to get more points than the other team.
of course. Yeah, again, so Gary refers to business a lot like sports, actually, in a couple of podcast episodes that I've listened of his. And obviously you mentioned in that point is like when we think of sports, whether it's football, soccer, or you know rugby here, or American football, or like whatever it is, or basketball. Most sports are team games, and even when you have sports like, I don't know, um, tennis or something, you still have a team behind, the
Yeah.
athlete, right? And
Yep.
so I think, like, as a society, we understand within sports, about a team and how important a team, the team is. But when it comes to, if it's a small business, or obviously a corporate level within the workplace, we seem to forget that, right? We seem to not realize that, and um, the whole kind of teamwork and collaboration in that, kind of goes out the window a bit. And I think, like,
Yeah.
if we kind of understand of, like, and think that way of, like, actually business, it is a lot like sports, and we it's a team game, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, in high school, I ran track, and it was a 4x4 relay race, and, you know, so one person starts the race and they run one lap around the track, and then you hand a baton to the other person and they run their lap. And so the fourth person actually crosses the finish line, but they didn't get there on their own. It took the other three individuals to do their part to get that person across the line. So it's the same thing in my industry or my business where I'm operating. We have folks in the warehouse, we have technicians that fix our equipment and create support for our customers. We have people that work in the office who answer the phone, and uh, payroll and invoicing and billing, just working out the back end data. And then we have our customer support team that talks to the customers. We have our route drivers that deliver the product and provide the service. And everybody on that team plays a crucial, uh, has a critical role in creating a customer experience. And so, you get to know those people. As a leader, I walk out in the warehouse, I walk around the office, and I talk to people. I introduce myself. I say, "Hi, I'm Jason. What's your name?" And, it might be Sally. "Hey, Sally, how long have you been here? What do you do? How do you like it? How can I help?" And Sally will look at me and say, "I've been here for 10 years and I've never had the general manager come out and ask me what my name is." And that's huge because Sally is a human being just like me. She's a daughter, she's a wife, she's a mother. She goes to the grocery store. She comes home at night and turns the light switch, and the lights come on in her house. She cooks dinner. She watches TV. She's a human being. And when you treat people like human beings, then they open up and then they start to
Mhm.
share their ideas. Then they start to express themselves versus just being part of a machine that operates, packaging things or filling things or, shipping things out. Like, like she's a human, and it's that
Mhm.
simple for me.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned was around yeah,
Yeah. So as a
I've got
leader, I just recommend that other leaders get to know your people,
yeah,
have conversations, you know,
yeah. Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. Them. What came back to me. So one of the things you were talking about was when you go out into the warehouse and that question of um, how can I help? What like are some people a bit like reserved? I mean, I'm not sure if you mentioned it before of like, or what like what does he want type of thing. Like, do you get that kind of response from people? Because um, yeah, I don't know if it would be the cultural difference between us here in the UK and you
yeah,
there,
yeah,
you there, but yeah, I kind of feel that if again everything's contextual, right? So like, I
sure,
could go
sure.
to like some environment and be like, okay, like how can I help? How can I serve? What kind like ask those sorts of questions, and then I can go into another environment and people be like what does he want type of thing, and just wondering if you've had
Right.
more about that experience and how you navigate that as a leader because you are coming from that authentic place of wanting to lead, serve, help,
Yeah,
and support their own personal growth
yeah.
and that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You have to open yourself up, Luke. I'll ask somebody, how can I help? And sometimes they'll just start rattling off things. And sometimes they do kind of get reserved and like, what does he mean? How can I help? And so it's just you have to explain what you're asking. And it's, hey, in your job function, what you're doing, do you ever think that things can be done better? Or what things are inefficient? What are you doing how is your job, right? Um, what would you like to see more of? What parts of your job um, drain you, or what would you like to see? And we can't always solve or accommodate, but what that does is opens up conversation and dialogue. And you have to make effort. You have to follow through. Often, what I will do is have a short conversation and I'll say, "Hey, if it's okay with you, I'd like you to have my phone number." And I'll pull my phone out and ask them their number, and I'll send them a text message with my name so that now they can put me in their phone. I say, if you ever need anything, shoot me a text message. Or, if you don't feel comfortable walking up to the office, shoot me a note. I'll be happy to help. And I've had people send me messages saying, "Hey, I was told that we can enroll for benefits, but I'm not sure how to do it." And I will take the time to go sit with them at a computer and help them log on and get them to the benefits page. And then while we're doing that, I'm having conversation with them about them being a human being. Oh, do you have a husband or children? Because you can add them here, and I walk them through it. It does take time, but I'll tell you this: people say, "Oh, how do you, that's just too much time. I don't have time to do that." Well, the reality is, Luke, is that if you don't take the time with people up front, you then you maybe they quit and now you're interviewing people or you're having to retrain or sit through disciplinary uh, you know, uh, meetings. And so I've always
Mm.
felt like I'm going to have to spend my time with this person or all of these people one way or another. I would rather it be on the front end and then have them want to be here and be happy being here. And then I get longevity from them on the back end. But if they're
Yeah,
not
I love
happy
that.
or they don't want to be here, then I end up spending negative energy on the back, having counseling sessions, firing somebody, having to place an ad and schedule interviews. So my time is going to be spent on this employee one way or another. I would much rather it be on the front, letting them know that I appreciate them and they're a good human being and how can I help?
Of course. No, it's 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 ultimately like getting to know your like your team, right? Getting to know your
Yeah.
people. Like, you know, if I was to go back into the workforce today and, somebody was to spend that kind of time with me, they would find out, like huge football fan, soccer fan, and so then um kind of once, when they know that, and like that's a passion for me. I don't know, like if it's my birthday or something, if they done a little
Yep.
thing, like then it kind of builds that connection, and that's something that I've picked up on reading, books and just kind of being in this space of actually investing that time. See it as an investment, right? Invest that time in building the relationships, and I love the fact that you are coming back to the other human beings, right? Like often in business and in the workplace, we just feel like, oh, they're my colleagues or they're my employees, but it's actually, they're actual human beings, and it's people, it's human beings that then make a business, because they form a team. And I think that we um, forget that or aren't, it's not the forefront of our mind, and so we aren't as conscious to it. So yeah, I love that you're coming back to that. In the time that we have left, do you have any other kind of quick fire tips for people um who are in these positions of so they run a team, etc., and what are some other things that they can do? Because um yeah, I think that it's not only a mindset switch. I think it's more, when I first started my journey, Jason, I was all about like mindset, right?
Mhm.
and and through especially the last 6 to 8 months, probably a year actually, I've started to, and obviously being connected with Ryan. I swear Ryan comes up in like every episode, but that's cool. Um, um, started to understand more around the like the heart set, right?
Yep. Yep.
Obviously, as he calls it, and just kind of that side of things, really.
Yeah.
And so while I think that there's a mindset switch that people, a perspective switch that people, if they've been doing things in the old way, to kind of to go through, but also if they start to connect with who they are more at their core, then I also feel like they can find like discover that and find that for themselves, because they're becoming more authentic. And I actually, maybe I'm naive, believe that actually all human beings are actually good, because we're not born as a baby bad, right? It's through conditioning, it's through society, it's through
Yes.
upbringing, all those sorts of things that our paths go off in different ways. But when we're able to come back to that more centered space, then and find our values and kind of and discover who we truly are, then that's also one way in which we can then lead more authentically and with more heart, love, kindness, empathy, etc., etc. So um I just feel like I've rambled there, but hopefully that makes sense, in that you have
No,
uh,
absolutely.
so some points to kind of talk to that.
Yeah. So, my podcast is called Own Your Space. And that term actually started in the workplace, speaking to my people, to my teammates, and it was about the things that we can control. There's four things that we can control. We can control what we think, what we feel, what we say, and what we do. And the first two are internal. Like, it's our mind, right? Our mindset, our feelings, our emotions. And the other two are external, because people listen to what you say. People see they watch what you do. And that goes back to, I'm very big on energy and the flow of energy. And during as as time goes and exists, there's really two directions of energy. It's the energy that's coming into you, what you're experiencing, and then there's the energy that's coming out of you, what you're influencing. And I have control over that. I have control over the output. And back to what you said, when we're born, babies are born as human beings, good human beings, right? And it's their environment. So as you go through life, we put these filters up, a filter of a bad experience or a good experience. And so when the energy comes to us, our thought process, our emotions are through that filter of what we know. And if we can um, understand that other people are human beings, and so when something negative, I mentioned earlier on that I traveled around a lot, or I moved a lot because my dad was in the military, and was constantly picking up and being relocated. And so being new to a lot of different school environments, and kids can be mean, right? And so I was bullied sometimes being the new guy in an environment. But what I understood is that what was happening was not about me. That energy coming to me was about the other person. So I would filter it. In my thought process, being bullied was, how sad that that person has to pick on me to feel better about themselves. So and then it's the energy that I give out, right? It's my experience and then my influence. And so that's really, really important to understand, that we are, and I am in control of what I feel, what I think, what I say, and what I do. And that's owning your space. And so it's not, you understand what I'm saying, right? It's
Of
understand
course, of
the
course.
yeah,
Yeah.
the energy, that having the consciousness, being aware of it, of that flow of energy. And so I think that that's just really important, that going back to, we're all human beings. um if there's creating that safe space, that if somebody doesn't feel that what is happening is right, having the courage to speak about it and creating a safe environment, to as a leader, to listen to what's going on with that person. And then it's either having some dialogue around it to help them understand what's happening, and maybe the perception is different, because we all have different filters, because we've walked different paths, we lived in different countries, we've you know
Yeah, of course.
economically, socially, all of that. So it's getting to know people, which takes down some of those barriers, and it takes us back to being human beings.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No, it's um with the energy thing, it's something that I've become more aware to myself, probably since October, November back last year. Kind of what gives me energy, what kind of takes energy away. And obviously when we're doing the things that give us energy, then we have more to give to others. It's just lo- obvious in that way.
Yeah.
So
And it's a
so
cycle.
yeah.
As a leader, when you give your energy to your people, then they become energetic.
Yeah.
And for me, when I see somebody who's happy or enjoying themselves at work, that energy comes back to me and fills me
Mhm.
up. And so
Yeah.
that it's this
That's
cycle.
so cool.
I get filled up from the wonderful environment that's being created, that it allows me to give more and it just flows.
Of course. That reminds me of like the concept, I guess, of when you have a team and they're all there for the same or similar, you know, purpose, or that overriding mission, or that why, and you're all, kind of all around that table, so you're all in some way um moving in the same direction, and that helps what we're kind of talking about, right? You're all similar minded, like minded. Also reminds me of you become the average of the five people you kind of spend the most time with, etc., etc. So um, a lot of these kind of concepts I'm kind of learning are integrated in, and that which which again, when we can actually apply them rather than just conceptualize them, but when we actually go out in the world and take action and apply them, then we can see change really, in our businesses, lives, whatever it is. Um, Amazing. Jason, do you have any final thoughts or words of inspiration for our listeners in the episode today?
Yeah, it's very simple. Go throughout your day with kindness. Uh, give a smile, say hello. And if you're a leader, ask someone, how can I help?
Love it. No, I would very, very quickly, I would talk to that point. So, um, so I've been like a huge runner, that's kind of like my go-to thing.
Yep.
And yeah, last year, so when I was on my run, I would just start to um say good morning or smile to people. Like before, I would just like have my headphones in and just focus on my run, and just like doing that simple thing. It was like, even though some people obviously have their own shit going on, and it's just like grunt at you back or something, it wasn't the fact that they were grunting at me back. It was the fact that actually I was, I should say it, saying kind of giving that outward sense of kindness, I guess, and that actually gave me and just made myself feel better as well. And if I can't control if they say good morning or smile back, but what I can control is what I put out into the world, and just yeah, intentionally focus there. So I would definitely it's again, it's a simple thing like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's you nailed it. It's your influence, right? You can't control what somebody experiences, but
Mm,
you can the probability of their experience being positive is much greater if your influence is positive. It's that
of
energy
course.
flow out of you. Yeah.
Of course. Amazing. Awesome, Jason. I've fully enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before I let you go and crack on with your day, where can people find you online if they want to learn more about what you do? Where can they check out the podcast? Yeah, share with
Yeah.
the world
Uh,
where they can find you.
thank you so much, Luke. I'm honored to be your guest. I've really enjoyed our conversation. I'm on Instagram, JT Johnson 360. I'm on Facebook, the Own Your Space podcast. I'm on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there because I'm in corporate. So
Of
yeah,
course.
any of those, send me a message. I'd love to have a conversation. The Own Your Space podcast is on all the major platforms: Apple, Spotify, Anchor, wherever you listen, wherever you tune in.
Awesome, Jason. Thank you so much. I will link everything down below, and obviously people can find you. And yeah, have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Luke. I appreciate you and your
No
time.
worries. No worries. Take care.
And for more after today's show, be sure to head on over to raisingconsciousness.show to get all of the show notes, transcriptions, videos for each episode, and a hell of a lot more. And if you got value from this episode, found it insightful, or learned a thing or two, please leave a review where you can let everyone know that this show is worth checking out. I appreciate you so much. You'll be hearing from me in the next episode.